Welcome back everyone. Those of you with a keen eye will notice that this is no longer my garage. Long story short, we've made this new work area to film in, as well as do other projects that may or may not end up on camera. Today we're back on the Cappuccino. We've got our engine on the stand ready to go. Since filming finished with the Cap, we've actually pulled the sump off, pulled the gearbox off, done a few other little bits and pieces just to get it ready. We're going to start by cleaning the deck face. We'll run a Stanley knife blade over it first, give it a good clean up. Once we're happy with the clean up surface, we'll actually run an oil stone over the block. I find that's the best way to clean cast iron blocks at home. Other people have different methods with like buffing pads and things like that, but depending on the pad surface used, you can actually sort of chop waves into the deck of the block. So that's one thing we want to avoid, because the gasket will never seal properly if that does happen. Once we have the deck face prepared properly and we're happy with it, we'll put the cylinder head on with our new gasket, but more on that a bit later. Brake cleaner in my finger. Now that we've finished cleaning the deck face with a razor blade, it's time to move on to the oil stone. This particular one's a combination stone, so we've got a coarse side on one side and quite a smooth side on the second side. Obviously when you're doing the block, you start coarse and finish fine. The one thing I would recommend is using something like WD-40 or any one of those other sort of lubricant sprays in conjunction with the stone. If you use the stone dry, it can clog up. It can also start to gouge the face of the block. I find this combination works pretty well together. One other thing too, if you do have a brand new stone, it is worth soaking it in your spray lube of choice before you use it, because these do absorb a lot of lubricant. So if you just go using a brand new stone dry, what you'll find is it'll probably suck most of the lubricant into the stone and not allow the actual face to be lubricated. So one thing to avoid when you're doing it. We've made our passes with the coarse side of the stone. The surface is looking pretty good, so we'll give it a quick wipe and we'll flip over to the smooth side, give it another run over, and as long as we're happy with it, we'll pretty much leave it to go and start assembling the engine. A small block like this, you'd probably take about half an hour to clean it up. Obviously something longer like an Iron Block 6, like a Barra or a 2J or an RB, you're probably going to be looking about an hour to do the whole surface. And then obviously anything in a V configuration may take you a bit longer. The surface ends up pretty clean. You're never going to get it completely perfect, because you will get little gouges and corrosion points. If you want to go to the extent of taking that out, we really recommend that you take the block to a machine shop. But depending on how deep it is, you may actually find that you'll take too much of the deck away and you'll either bump your compression through the roof, or the pistons may hit the heads and you'll have other issues. So yeah, we recommend just running the stone across, because I haven't seen a block yet that we can't clean up and reuse with it. Except for Mark Arblaster's block at Drag Week where he nuked that. Hi Mark. So we'll throw our 3-cylinder boat anchor back together, and hopefully in the next day or so we'll get it back in the car. Just finished the second pass with the smooth side of the stone. Pretty happy with the total deck finish with this, so we'll check the head out, and as long as that's also good to go, we'll continue assembling the engine. These are all the parts that we've got to repair our Cappuccino engine. Primarily it's all genuine stuff, so all our cam and crank seals and our rear main seal are genuine. All our head bolts, they're all genuine, there's 8 of those. We've got our inlet and exhaust manifold gaskets are also genuine. Our cam box O-rings are genuine. The thing that we don't have that is genuine, however, is a head gasket. So this is a Monster Sport gasket. It's an aftermarket company in Japan. This particular gasket is a multi-layer steel design, as opposed to the OEM gasket, which is a graphite or composite design. So this gasket's actually designed for a lot more boost and power. But the thing I like more about these than the boost and power that they're made to hold is there's a lot more material between the cylinders. And our particular gasket actually did fail between cylinder 2 and 3. So this gasket should combat that. So we'll check it on the block to make sure it is in fact the correct gasket. And as long as that's good to go, we'll start putting the head on. This is our serviced cylinder head. This isn't actually the original head from our existing engine. This is the head that we removed in the previous video. As you can see, this one still actually has the inlet and exhaust manifolds and the turbocharger bolted to it. To save time and speed everything up a little bit, we sent this second head away to get it serviced. It's been completely acid bathed. We've replaced all the Welch plugs in it, all new valve stem seals. They've recut the valve seats and they've machined the head face, so we'll flip it over and have a bit more of a look at it. Now that we've confirmed that this head gasket is in fact the correct one for the engine, we're going to spray some Hylamar on it. Different countries may call it different things. This is basically like a jointing compound or a sealant. It is to be used sparingly. We don't want to actually paint the gasket blue. It's a very fine, almost like a glue. So it just helps it stick to the block better, being that it's an MLS gasket, and obviously the head face as well. So give it a quick spray. We'll let it cure for a couple of minutes. You basically want it so it's tacky like a contact adhesive, not wet. So once it's cured, we'll put the gasket in, then we'll start bolting the head on. Suzuki genuine parts, sourced from Japan. Got all our head bolts ready. We've got some ARP assembly lubricant. Can or can't use it, there's no real issue. A lot of guys just use engine oil. I already had this lying around, so I thought we may as well use it. This is more consistent lubrication to enable correct torque for the bolts. I put it on the head face between the head and the washer, and also do put some on the thread. That basically enables the bolt to turn more freely, and as I already said, to ensure the correct torque for the head bolt. An engine like this is not super critical, being that it's going to make 100 horsepower if you're lucky, but something like the Cresta or one of the bigger builds that we've done before, you need to ensure that the bolts or the head studs are torqued correctly to make sure that you're not going to blow out a head gasket or cause other damage. Whatever engine assembly lube you choose to use, be it oil or a commercially available assembly lubricant, it's pretty critical to only use as much as you need. I have seen cases before where people have used a molybdenum-based assembly lubricant, similar to this, but for the whole engine. And I've actually seen oil pickups restricted and blocked from too much of that lubricant, because it doesn't actually seem to break down in normal engine oils. So for that reason, I wouldn't recommend to use this type of engine assembly lube on bearings or in oil pumps or anything like that. We'd more recommend to use an oil-based lubricant like what's on all the valve train components in this particular engine. Our engine reconditioner actually already pre-lubed all the components in the head, so we don't have to redo it. We'll give it a quick check before we do assemble it for the final time, but pretty well we're right to go with it. They're normally pretty well onto it, so we use those guys because they do a good job, so they're all over it. Got all our head bolts in place. It's time to torque it down. We've got a factory workshop manual download actually on my phone, so it's pretty handy. It gives you the torque spec and also the pattern. This particular engine only has a single torque process. Some engines you've got to do like a stage process and then a backing off process and then a retorque. This one's pretty simple, so we've only got the single stage torquing, and it's a pretty basic pattern. So we'll torque the head up and continue on with putting the cam boxes on. When you're torquing the cylinder head down, it's pretty crucial to put nice even pressure on the torque wrench, like so. So you just give it a nice gentle pull. If you sort of nip right at it, like straight away, it's gone over the scale. So we've just seen 64 Newton meters pretty easily by just jarring on it. This being a digital one, super sensitive, but if you're using a dial type or the clicking type, they will give you false readings. If you sort of give it a quick jar, you've got to give it a nice sort of a gentle tension as opposed to sort of reefing on it, because it's just going to give you a completely false reading, and unfortunately the false reading will be a lot lower, or sorry, the true tension will be a lot lower than the reading you're seeing on your wrench. So yeah, just a nice gentle pull and you get your reading. This particular one's, we're torquing them to 60 Newton meters. So we try and be sort of right around that 60. The factory workshop manual, the threshold's 62. So anything under that 62 is fine, but we try and stick pretty evenly right across the board around the 60 mark. So we'll keep going. Our cylinder head's all torqued down, so the next process is to put the cam boxes on. One thing that's sometimes overlooked with these engines is to replace the cam box O-rings. It's a little rubber gasket or an O-ring that sits on the bottom of the cam box. These do dry out and leak. This one's not too bad actually, but oh yep, it's pretty brittle. See that they are definitely past the use by date. Just pick them out. I've seen a few of these engines too. People have applied a lot of sealant to this O-ring. There's actually no room to put any sealant on the O-ring groove. It's a direct fit groove, so sealant can actually push the O-ring out and make the problem worse rather than trying to help. So give it a quick clean out with some brake cleaner or engine parts cleaner. We use brake cleaner because it evaporates pretty quickly here, and it's also designed to break down oil and things like that. So it's ideal for assembling engines as well as cleaning brake parts. Yeah, we use it for everything, so there's never a shortage of it around here. So it's always easy to give stuff a quick wipe down. And we also don't want to wipe down any internal part of the cam box. As previously mentioned, the machine shop has already pre-lubed all the cam box bearings so that we can assemble it without having to pull it and re-lube it. So we'll ensure that we don't get any brake cleaner in the back side of the cam box. So new O-rings going in. Being that they are genuine O-rings, they'll go straight in with no fitment issues. So that's the other reason we don't use sealant on them, as well as they're designed to be used dry. My theory is if the manufacturer didn't do it, you shouldn't do it either. So we'll chuck this O-ring in dry and then we'll bolt the cam box down to the engine. As it turns out, this water pump's just about brand new anyway. Just because we're in here, we may as well put the new one on it. I'd be more than happy to reuse that if we didn't have a spare pump here, but seeing as we've got a brand new one, we may as well swap it out and hang on to this one for a spare, I guess. Our new timing belt. This is actually a genuine Suzuki one. We sourced this along with a lot of the other parts in Japan. This genuine one doesn't actually have any marks on it, so you just got to rely on the marks between the pulleys and the covers. So we've got a towing mark here relating to here. Same on the pulley here. And then we've also got an arrow and a pin mark down here for the crank. So we'll chuck this belt on and hopefully it's all good. We've got our F6A long motor completely assembled now. We've got our time belt kit on, cylinder heads on. Next thing to do is spin it over and we're going to bolt the sump on. We originally removed the sump just to give it a quick inspection and we found nothing wrong, so we're just going to put the sump back on and let the cylinder dry, then we're going to go on and have a bit of lunch. Today we completely reassembled the F6A from our Cappuccino. We replaced the time belt kit, the water pump, we put a new head gasket in, we had the head serviced, we replaced all other seals and gaskets. Next up, we'll put the box and clutch on with a new rear main seal. Then after that, we'll throw it in the car. That's all we've got time for today, guys. We'll catch you next video.